So, hello, welcome. This is Headlocks and Headphones. Now, this is one of those episodes where you want everything to be positive. I'm going to tell you now, it's not positive. We have had a response from Murphy in this little argument that him and JJ Andrews are having. We have, of course, got Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and the wrestling news coming up in a minute. However, there is a little bit of an Anderson rant coming up later on as well, and it does involve content put out by the WWE. There's no excuse for it. Now, I've reached out to several people, not just friends and family. I've reached out to people who actually are in one of the communities involved in what WWE decided to do this week. And hopefully you'll see a pattern of WWE doing really stupid shit. This is nothing to do with Paul Heyman being fired. This is nothing to do with Bruce Pritchard taking over the creative direction of the company, because we all know Vince is in charge. And it has everything to do with decisions made by WWE in recent weeks. We're going to discuss them a little bit as I get a little bit angry with WWE and the stupid decisions they've made in wake of the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about in terms of Black Lives Matter movement, pause now, go Google, educate yourself, then come back, we'll have a little rant. Great, now you're back. WWE did have a failure for one of their tests this week. They had somebody show up with COVID-19 and they ended up having to postpone some tapings, and it's led to SmackDown basically being taped on Friday a few hours in advance rather than several days in advance. Big changes have been made to TV over the next coming weeks. I don't know if it's due to the availability of stars who perhaps were available for Tuesday taping but not available on Friday. There is also quite a lot of extra testing being done, especially in the wake of the fact that they allowed fans into the show on Monday. Now, these were not real fans. These were friends and family of the people who were actually in the audience. However, it's still a massive deal. WWE have had somebody with a positive test at the Performance Center, not an active member of the roster, somebody who's actually in the developmental system and somebody who's not been on TV. So they haven't revealed who it is. It is just one of those things, unfortunately, where WWE have had to change their filming schedule. But as long as everybody stays safe, that's kind of the most important thing. Now, Vince McMahon has obviously allowed some really negative things to happen on TV. One of the good things is Angel Garza and his push. However, this is where things start to get a little interesting, because it's where I'm going to start taking this show this week. Vince McMahon apparently sees Angel Garza as a young Eddie Guerrero. Now, on AEW, Jim Ross said that he sees Sammy Guevara as a young Eddie Guerrero. Why does there have to be an Eddie Guerrero that is a go-to? Angel Garza is Angel Garza. He's not a young Eddie Guerrero. When you try and put that weight on somebody, it's too much. Particularly when it seems to get thrown around anytime a Mexican star does anything in the business. Eddie Guerrero is great. Why do we need to keep bringing his legacy up and comparing other people to him? Angel Garza is Angel Garza. Sammy Guevara is Sammy Guevara. Eddie Guerrero is Eddie Guerrero. Somebody better be ready to step up and be a special type of wrestler if they want to be like Eddie Guerrero. Now, for me, I don't have any issue with somebody labeling themselves as better than Eddie Guerrero, because that makes people think about it. But when people in the company are doing it, that's when it becomes a little bit, you're kind of trying to play on the legacy of Eddie Guerrero here. And I'm not a fan of that. So, WWE this week have actually had, obviously, the negative of the pandemic. The NWA, however, through Nick Aldis, have revealed that they had their most profitable month during the pandemic. Now, that's a really great thing for the NWA. Billy Corgan and his team have set up something that's a little bit different there. Now, I'm not a big fan of Dave Lagana. The way that he handled the Jim Cornette issue was just weird. But Jim Cornette needed to go. With the joke that was made, it was inappropriate, and he needed to move on. Everybody could have done that in a lot better way than they did. Jim Cornette himself says it's a joke that was made a lot. I mean, it was meant to be humorous. Probably not the best time to do it. Now, keep that phrase in mind. Probably not the best time to do it, because you're going to hear that a lot later on. Now, in addition to the stuff that WWE have got that's quite big news, if you know anything about independent wrestler David Starr, and I'm not going to dwell on this too much because it obviously is a big negative, but David Starr has been accused of many things over the years, very few of which have been being a great wrestler. He's passable for me. I'm not a huge fan. He's been accused of rape, sexual abuse, gaslighting, and verbal and other types of abuse as well towards exes. Something that he has released a statement saying that he's not a rapist. However, he has been a dickhead to ex-girlfriends. He even used phrases like grey rape. If you don't know what that is, go Google it, but be ready to be a little bit pissed when you do. Quite a lot of promotions have come out and said they don't want to work with David Starr. At the minute, though, everything's allegations. Whilst I don't like him, he's not been convicted of anything. He's not guilty of anything at this point in the eyes of the law. However, if he is guilty of something, I hope he gets punished as much as the law allows. If he's not guilty, I hope his name gets cleared and he gets to go out and perform again. Hopefully this will make him clear up the attitude issue that many people seem to think that he has. Now, one of the big changes that happened last week, I mentioned briefly, Bruce Pritchard is now in charge of WWE Creative for both Raw and SmackDown because Paul Heyman was fired. But he is still involved in the company, but he's just an on-air talent. Now, apparently, quite a few people were big fans of Paul Heyman. Drew McIntyre got his push as a result of Paul Heyman. There's Humberto Carrillo, Angel Garza, Zelina Vega, Aleister Black, AOP, Buddy Murphy, and Andrade became key stars on the Raw setup. Now, Ricochet, Cedric Alexander were two that he tried to push and didn't work out. Street Profits and Liv Morgan were also praised and pushed by Paul Heyman. Now, I think Cedric Alexander, Ricochet, two guys WWE should be pushing to the moon. Now, obviously, there's a lot more happening in the wrestling business. Tessa Blanchard's still stuck in Mexico. We have possible debut of EC3 in Impact Wrestling. We have, of course, several things happening. Now, we will talk about those things, obviously, if they get bigger. There will be more wrestling news in next week's show. We are, however, getting to the point where we have to talk about WWE shows this week. So we're going to do them in order, and we're going to fire through them. And the reason we're going to fire through them, it's important that we do this so that I can get to why I'm unhappy with WWE television this week. Now, when I say television, I also mean the pay-per-views. And then we can get to covering the response from Murphy to what was said by JJ Andrews last week. Now, if you missed what happened last week, go back and check last week's episode. If you're wondering why I'm rubbing my head and you haven't seen it, it's because I've known JJ for 20 years and I've never seen him do the kind of stuff he did last week. He actually, during lockdown, traveled from one part of Glasgow to the other and filmed Murphy's house because Murphy won't reply to him. So yeah, there is quite a lot going on there. Go back and check the last episode and you'll see what I mean with that video from JJ. But we will get there because we have other stuff that we need to get angry about right now. You all know I'm not entirely happy with the Jeff Hardy stuff that's happening on SmackDown. And we all know who's in charge of the creative there. And the creative department is now the same for SmackDown and Raw, at least in terms of who's leading it. The overall direction is controlled by Bruce Pritchard. Now we'll get to why I think that's an issue later on in the show. We did have some pretty decent stuff on SmackDown in many ways. Braun Strowman and Heavy Machinery versus Dolph Ziggler, The Miz and John Morrison. It doesn't matter who wins these matches. The content was what it was. Bayley and Sasha Banks through an epic championship friendship celebration. The history of the Intercontinental Championship was shown as well. Not a fan of the new belt, however, it was still quite cool to see that little bit of history of that cool belt, even though it was won in a fake tournament originally. Otis and Tucker reunite backstage for some pre-match training. Tucker's been away for a while, and they haven't really done a very good job of explaining that, other than the fact that obviously there's a relationship between Otis and Mandy, and I'm not a big fan of that storyline either. I know everybody else is a huge fan of Otis for some reason. I just don't get it. He's a big dude who can do the worm. You kind of see 10 of those on nights out if enough alcohol is flowing. What we did see was the contract signing between Sheamus and Jeff Hardy, with the condition that Jeff Hardy had to pass a piss test, which is fine. Passing a piss test isn't a problem. WWE have a wellness policy, and as far as I'm concerned, somebody like Jeff Hardy, somebody who should probably tested a little bit more frequently by the company, but don't turn that into a storyline. It's still stupid. It's still something you just don't touch. It shows a lack of common sense when it comes to the creative process. One thing that I did think was very cool was WWE gave New Day a chance to take their knee. Obviously, what's happening with Black Lives Matters, whether you agree with the protest or not, the ability for the people who are taking part to protest is important, because we need to have a discussion about the topics that are being raised, and that discussion needs to lead to change. Now, obviously, anybody who's spoken to me in the past few days will understand why I'm a little bit pissed about the product that's being put out. But WWE are getting some things right. The New Day being allowed to take a knee, it shows WWE are at least aware that this is something they need to accept and acknowledge, which makes something that happens at Backlash all the more gut-wrenching for me. I'm so angry, and I know some people will say, oh, you just get angry all the time, but this really pissed me off. I had to message people to find out if I was just getting upset for no reason, but it did piss me off. Anyway, we did see Daniel Bryan versus AJ Styles. This match deserved an audience. It deserved 20,000 people live getting to see how good this match was. Now, as far as I'm concerned, this is the best match WWE have put on during the pandemic by several miles. And I think Vince is somebody who knows that AJ Styles can go out there and have a great match with anybody. So it was good to see that Daniel Bryan and AJ had a great match. It was also quite interesting to see that Daniel Bryan may have had the result of this match accidentally spoiled, because there was a picture posted by the Bellas which featured the Intercontinental Championship with Daniel Bryan plates. So perhaps they saw this and WWE thought, well, let's change it. But for me, AJ Styles was the right person to get this. Daniel Bryan doesn't need a belt. I think he's over regardless. Whereas AJ can build a legacy with the Intercontinental Championship, especially with Braun Strowman being the world champion. It does give him something a little bit different. Now, SmackDown was the last show before the pay-per-view. The pay-per-view, of course, they are doing them slightly shorter than normal. But let's go through some of the matches that took place. Apollo Crews defeated Andrade with Angel Garza and Zelina Vega. They've put a lot of energy into Apollo Crews, and I'm very happy with that. Apollo has been a great wrestler. We will talk about how good he was on Raw as well. Bayley and Sasha Banks defeated Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross and the Iconics to retain their title, which was a below 10-minute match. It was what it was. It was passable. Not great, not horrible. We then saw Sheamus defeat Jeff Hardy. Asuka and Nia Jax ended in a double count out, and that leads into something that happens on Raw as well. Braun Strowman defeated The Miz and John Morrison. Drew McIntyre defeated Bobby Lashley, but only after Lana came down and accidentally distracted Bobby Lashley. Again, that leads into something that happens on Raw. And Randy Orton defeated Edge. That leads into the opening segment of Raw, which we will discuss in a second. However, this is where the ranting starts, and this is where I'm going to come across as really angry. So I have to kind of try and temper that by saying that I don't exactly know what everybody goes through in terms of racism. I'm a white guy. I just don't have to deal with it. So my understanding is largely formed by speaking to people and asking them. Now, there's one person out there who has answered quite a lot of my questions, and in particular, in relation to this, I've shown them the segments involved, and they have actually given me their reaction, which I will tell you once I've discussed it a little bit more. Now, they advertised a match, the Street Profits versus War Raiders, Viking Raiders, the Viking, whatever name they're going under. It's hard to remember sometimes. It is the Viking Raiders. It's Ivar and Eric. So they're doing this anything you can do, we can do better thing. Now, this does get extended onto Raw, but they advertised a match. And this is the thing. The post that I saw on Sunday was that there was going to be a match between Street Profits and the Viking Raiders. And I was kind of looking forward to it because that's the blow off. You know that's the end of the story. And that would have been a brilliant end to the story. But it wasn't the end of the story. We had another cinematic match involving these two teams, which also saw Akira Tozawa come out dressed as a ninja. And we had Carl Douglas Kung Fu Fighting play as well. For me, there's a problem here. It's playing to stereotypes. Now, I know the name for BLM is Black Lives Matter. But the problem is stereotypes are hurtful. Now, I don't want to name the person that I was speaking to, but the person that I spoke to about this is Japanese. At least part of their family heritage is Japanese. So to see something like this after me and this person had a discussion about how Come Fly With Me with David Walliams and Matt Lucas was actually deeply offensive to her and actually caused some bullying because people saw it as a joke. To see Akira Tozawa show up as a man with ninjas, it's the kind of stupid comedy stuff that Vince Russo used to write in the 90s when that kind of stuff was more acceptable, and now during this period you want to have something like that. And I don't understand why, when race is a big issue, you would want to try and poke fun at people from different cultures. I certainly think that now is not the right time to do it. Now, one of the things that's quite interesting about the Akira Tozawa thing is he was mimicking Shinsuke Nakamura. But whilst he was mimicking Shinsuke Nakamura on Raw, he had what is being referred to as the Giant Ninja. It's being referred to as something else on the internet right now, something which I'm not going to refer to if I can avoid it. And it's a guy called Jordan Omegbehin. Now, I may be messing that name up, and if I am, I apologize. But he is an African-American by the look of it. He is covered in a hood, and he is basically doing the bidding for somebody else. Now, one of the things that intrigues me, we are going to talk more about Raw, minus the segment largely involving the Tozawa thing, and I'm going to mention it when we talk about Raw, but not in depth because I'm doing it now. Now, the ninja basically acted as a bodyguard for Tozawa, a storyline that's been done 100 times and will surely be done again. The problem is that when I showed this to a non-wrestling fan, they went, wait a second. So the black guy's big and scary, and then a white guy comes along and beats him up, or the white guy comes along and scares him, and he runs away. The stance that they took was that there's something not quite right here. Now, I'm going to take my phone, and I'm going to get the quote that I've been given by somebody who found the Akira Tozawa stuff deeply offensive, but also found the Giant Ninja offensive because of the racial element behind it as well. I wasn't offended because it offended me. I think the timing of this is absolutely horrendous. One of the things that was said really does ring true. So I'm going to read the whole quote from the person that I sent the 2 clips to. Now, the 2 clips I sent, the first one was from Backlash, and it was the end of the cinematic match with Street Profits. And the second one was the end of the match with Street Profits and Viking Raiders versus Tozawa and the Ninjas, the part that had Big Show come out. Again, if you haven't seen it, I'm going to mention it when I talk about Raw, but because we mentioned the pay-per-view, I want to get it out of the way now. So this is what was mentioned when I sent this clip to somebody with Japanese heritage. I think there is a possibility the director was just too ignorant to fully think about the impact it would have. I highly doubt that he had malicious intentions, but that isn't enough of an excuse in my opinion. If you're the creative director, then ignorance is a bit of a dangerous and weak point. I'm not saying WWE is being racist. I'm not saying WWE have done this to poke at the racial button. I'm not saying WWE have done this for a reaction. My first thought when this happened was that timing is awful. Now, they've done Kung Fu Naki in the past. It was a comedy gimmick. They've done, again, involving Funaki, they did the microphone gimmick where Taka Michinoku and Funaki would talk into the microphone, and Bruce Pritchard would actually voice it over from backstage. Now, here's the thing: that for some reason, the common denominator in all of this seems to be Bruce Pritchard. Now, I'm not saying he's racist. What I think is that he is stuck in the past, and what that means is he's making these jokes thinking that they're funny because it appeals to a 70-year-old man who runs the company. The only problem being that you have riots, you have issues based on race, and now you're basically putting up, on TV, something like this at the same time as you're building an all-black faction as well through MVP and Bobby Lashley, who are going to obviously add the likes of Shelton Benjamin, as far as I can see, possibly R-Truth, possibly Apollo Crews. So WWE have really, really left a sour taste in my mouth with this story, and I think it's a very bad use of Tozawa. I get they want to try and be entertaining. I don't see what's entertaining about that, and that's something that really did annoy me this week. And that I was going to leave the rant till the end, but I think because we mentioned it for the pay-per-view, I definitely wanted to mention it there. WWE, very, very bad misstep when it comes to that storyline. I think throwing that in there was such a waste of time. So now let's move on. And we will obviously have to mention the Ninja on Raw, but we'll try and do it as quickly as possible with you knowing that I think that the story is inappropriate. I think, quite frankly, it's using stereotypes that are designed to make people laugh. The very same thing that my friend who I spoke to actually pointed out was deeply offensive and led to bullying when it happened on a David Williams and Matt Lucas show. That's my opinion. That's the opinion of people who are in the community. That's the opinion of people around me. Why can't WWE see that they're doing things that can be seen as bad? And this is a company who were accused of being racist with ACH. This is a company Leo Rush is accused of being racist, although he was shot down by Mark Henry. There are allegations. This is the same week where Triple H says they're doing everything they can for Black Lives Matter. But whilst doing everything they can for Black Lives Matter, they're throwing up racial stereotypes, which kind of feeds into my frustration with the Black Lives Matter movement, which is not even aimed at the Black Lives Matter movement. It's aimed at the other side, who keep making the argument that it shouldn't be Black Lives Matter, it should be All Lives Matter. I mean, the argument on one level is sound. All lives do matter, regardless of your skin color. It doesn't matter what skin color you are. You should not have to suffer any abuse based on that skin color. The problem is when the other side can latch on to, well, WWE are saying Black Lives Matter, but then they're picking on the Asian guy. WWE are saying that they're going to do everything they can to not play to racial stereotypes. And then that's what they do with several people over the years. But that's the thing. The performers are willing to do these storylines. So maybe if they were that offensive to people within the entire community and not just elements of it that I've spoken to, perhaps these performers would stand up and not do it. But then this is the same company that had Junkyard Dog come down to the ring wearing chains. This is the same company that took Tony Atlas back and called him Saba Simba. This is the same company that likes to use the criminal element of a particular culture and use that as a stereotype as well. Stereotypes form part of every part of entertainment. WWE seem guilty of it more than most. Hopefully, this is just a misstep by creative and not an indicator of what we have to look forward to, because I'm genuinely not going to watch Raw and SmackDown if the Ninja is the kind of thing that we're going to be seeing. I'm also not happy about something that happened in NXT, but that's at least not likely to offend people of a very sensitive nature right now, and it's just something that I found pretty gross. We'll get to that though. So this week we actually saw Randy Orton come out and celebrate the fact that he beat Edge at the pay-per-view, which was a great match, even if it did end up with Edge getting his pec torn off the bone, and he's going to be out for at least 6 to 9 months if he's lucky. Likelihood is WrestleMania next year will be the next time we see Edge, which is a shame. But injuries happen, and based on the way they taped that match, apparently they taped it 2 or 3 times and they went through it. So that did increase the risk of injury for all of the performers involved. But we did see Christian come down and try to defend his best friend. That's when Randy Orton actually decided that he was going to issue a challenge. Now, I know Christian can't wrestle, but what they did wasn't a wrestling match. It was actually an unsanctioned match. So there was no bumps, and it was quite a tame by WWE standards for a beatdown. But we will get to the beatdown very soon. Kevin Owens defeated Angel Garza. I've been saying for weeks, Kevin Owens has been losing far too many matches, and that's going to be a problem. The only problem is with the failure of somebody for a COVID test this week, Kevin Owens opted to stay at home, so he's not going to be on Raw for the foreseeable future. Foreseeable future means potentially at least a week or two based on how they're taping the shows. What's quite interesting, after weeks of Angel Garza attacking Kevin Owens' left knee, Kevin Owens got payback and went after Garza on the match. The bad blood between Garza and Andrade was, however, why the match ended. Their bickering led to Zelina Vega storming away from ringside. Then Andrade tried to distract Owens, but Garza failed to capitalize on the opportunity, falling victim to a stunner, and that was the end of the match. I like Garza. There's a lot there. I think Garza is somebody who could have a very, very bright future ahead of him. Is he the next Eddie Guerrero? That's a lot of pressure. I know I said that already, but that's a lot of pressure to put on anybody to call anybody the next. Well, to call anybody the next anybody, but to call somebody the next Eddie Guerrero, who, if you've listened to the Undertaker on After the Bell podcast this week, even he said Eddie Guerrero, he got every single part of the business. He was so talented. It was almost like second nature to him. But that leads into Bobby Lashley, who came out and MVP cut a promo basically saying the only reason that Bobby Lashley isn't the champion is because Lana distracted him. I never liked the Bobby Lashley Lana thing. It was very weird. I found Lana, although some people really like her as a performer, I'm just not a fan of her as a performer. Her delivery is very weird. She messes up her lines and tries to make it sound like she meant it all along, when in reality, I just don't think that wrestling's for her. From what I've heard, good actress, but just it doesn't come across very well. She comes across just whiny and bitchy. But I don't think we're getting rid of her anytime soon, and I'll explain more about that later. Bobby Lashley, however, did say he wants a divorce. So that's kind of interesting. You get rid of Lana, MVP is going to need to expand that group, and we may find out somebody later on in Raw. If you haven't already watched it, it could be getting added to the group. Now, we did see backstage the Ninja and Akira Tozawa basically issuing a challenge to the Viking Profits, is what they're now being known as, and they actually did some tag team moves together. So not just the Street Profits, but the Street Profits and the Viking Raiders did moves together. So that was quite an interesting thing to see. But what we did see was the Big Show come out to help them when the Big Ninja was in the ring trying to help Akira Tozawa. So, you know, I've mentioned how unhappy I am with that. There was one thing, and this is the last I'm going to mention on it because it's pissed me off a lot. It's just be sensitive to what's going on around you. Don't put shit like this on your TV. It makes no sense. But it was pointed out to me that what you have is, and I'll use the words that were used to me earlier, you have a big black dude standing in the ring looking scary. And the only way you can tackle the big black dude is to send down a big white dude. And they send down the biggest white dude, the Big Show. I didn't even think of that until it was mentioned to me. But, you know, if somebody's really sensitive and they're looking at these things, then those things can become an issue. And I think WWE need to be more sensitive. And, you know, I did see one person defend this bullshit by saying, oh yeah, but there were two black guys in the ring. If there was an issue, they would have said, okay, but these guys are not John Cena, they're not the Big Show. They can't just turn around and say, well, no, I don't want to do it. These are guys who have a job, and perhaps they didn't even look at it that way. Perhaps in hindsight, they will look back on it differently. Randy Orton himself has said he never used to get the Black Lives Matter movement. He wasn't racist as far as I'm aware, but he also didn't really understand the need for the protest. He didn't understand the need for change. So one of the things that's quite interesting there is Randy said that the more he's kept in touch with these things, he's been able to change his opinion, and he sees the reason for it. So for me, I have a huge problem with WWE doing this. And it mars for me, I've been saying for weeks, it mars for me what has been overall a reasonably well-built show for the past few weeks. Now, we move on to something more positive. They did have Seth Rollins doing a promo in the ring with Rey Mysterio on tape, on satellite, as the old saying goes. And what was quite interesting there was, as Rey was talking, the first thing I thought was, wouldn't it be cool if Dominic came out behind? Wouldn't it be cool if Dominic was able to actually get in the ring, even though you've got the perspex around the ring, and was able to attack Seth Rollins? And that's exactly what happened. And Seth sold like a trooper for him. It was really, really good. But when obviously Murphy and Austin Theory realized what was happening, they ran into the ring. Dominic was able to get away. One of those segments that for me is very, very good. It doesn't last very long, but it got over the fact that Dominic is somebody who can get them. So I think Dominic and Rey could be wrestling together on Raw before we realize it. Now moving on, the Iconics defeated Natalya and Liv Morgan, and afterwards we did have Natalya tell Liv Morgan that she understands why Ruby Riott got rid of her. So Natalya's character is changing slightly, and we did see later on there was a after Liv Morgan walked off, you did have Lana step out and say that she understood what she was going through. So maybe we could see something between Natalya and Lana there on screen, which would be quite interesting, at least over the next wee while. And we did see Apollo Crews with another great defense against Shelton Benjamin. But what we did see was Apollo Crews actually get, for me, what was a very good finish in there. So Shelton Benjamin did roll up, he got his foot on the ropes, and the referee stopped the count. Apollo Crews then rolled Shelton Benjamin up and then held the ropes with his hand to get the win, showing that although he's not a heel, he's willing to do anything he can to actually get the win. I'm a huge fan of Apollo Crews, not just because he looks like Terry Crews from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but because he actually seems to have found his groove in WWE. Hopefully the loss of Paul Heyman on Raw hasn't caused a detriment to him, but they seem to have invested a little bit in him, so hopefully that'll be quite entertaining over the next few weeks, especially if we head towards MVP management to sign him up. WWE Champion Drew McIntyre and R-Truth defeated Bobby Lashley and MVP. We did see some comedy segments there after there was an altercation at the Performance Center between them. But what we did see was the end of Drew McIntyre getting his DDT, and he tagged in R-Truth, who went in and pinned MVP. So now we can see that R-Truth has a pinfall win over MVP, which is a great thing for R-Truth. One quite interesting thing was the referee went over to Drew to lift his hand, and what I saw was Drew actually put the referee's hand into R-Truth's, and then he went around the other side so they could both celebrate together. Minor detail, but something that for me stood out very much, that Drew's trying to get other people over. We did see the Iconics goad Bayley and Sasha Banks into accepting their challenge, which means that if we do have tag team champions Sasha and Bayley next week, it will be against the Iconics for the tag team championships, which would be good. Let's find out what happens on NXT to find out if that match is happening. Raw Women's Champion Asuka defeated Nia Jax. This is an interesting one. I think they're doing some kind of referee story here. So the referee wouldn't count a pinfall that Nia Jax had because Asuka's foot was under the ropes. Nia Jax pushed the referee. The referee was awaiting disqualifier, and the referee turned around and saw Asuka had rolled up Nia Jax and did what the storyline suggests was a fast count. Nia Jax is suggesting it. The referee says that it wasn't a fast count. Perhaps there was some adrenaline involved. However, he says that it wasn't corruption. We're going to see how this pans out, but obviously this just seems another way to protect the Nia Jax character. If you're trying to protect the Nia Jax character, why book Nia Jax versus Asuka when you don't want Asuka to lose either? This is just the most backwards way of booking things. If you don't want either girl to have a loss, don't book them together. Book them in a triple threat and pin the other one. I can't believe I'm having to say this to people who run a wrestling company, but if you don't want somebody to lose, don't put them in a match where they have to lose. Now, we did see Ric Flair backstage, and I kind of like this. Rick's with Christian said, you don't have to do this. Really, just nobody's going to feel like you let them down. Christian said he had to do it as he's heading down to the ring. We did see Ric Flair come out behind him and say, listen, I've spoken to Edge. He's not going to feel let down if you don't do this. And Christian said on the mic, Rick, I respect you, but I have to do it. Now, as Christian's taking a step forward, Rick came behind him, did the old Ric Flair punch to the groin, and then we saw Randy take over. It was a fairly tame beatdown, especially by WWE standards. Randy Orton did the kick that he does, the punt, and we saw Christian sell the hell out of it. Now, the last few minutes was Randy telling the WWE medical team to look after him. But then he said, just remember, this is your fault. This is my livelihood. Edge tried to take it, and now you're trying to take it. So this is all your fault. But I am sorry. The internal conflict he had when he attacked Edge, I loved it. I said it at the time. I said it when this was just a radio show. The internal conflict that he had when he attacked Edge was amazing. I love the psychology behind it. He repeated almost the identical story here with Christian. So it's going to be fun to see where that story goes over the next wee while. But certainly I would think that Christian's not going to be on TV very often, especially with Edge being out, unless Christian is cleared to wrestle. But from the segment that they had, it looks like he's probably still not cleared to wrestle. However, we did mention that there was a women's tag match on NXT. Let's try and get through that before we get into the last part of today's show. NXT champions, the Imperium versus Breezango, saw Imperium win, which for me is a great win for Imperium. Breezango, a team that's been on the main roster, both guys who've been involved on the biggest shows of the year. So very interesting to see those guys. Now, chaos erupted with the arrival of Malcolm Bivens and Indus Sher, who are two big dudes I would not want to mess with. They were met by Danny Burch and Oney Larkin. There was an all-out brawl. Aichner capitalized on the chaos. He spiked Fandango, the DAT, for the win. Not the greatest match you're ever going to see, but you establish 4 teams there that are going to be fighting for that title. And for me, that is a great thing. You've established 4 teams. One of the flaws that I see with AEW is where we see the title shots every week almost seeming kind of random, where we don't entirely know who's going to be in and around. NXT told you in the first match, okay, Imperium and Breezango, they're two teams that are going to be involved in this. Imperium, of course, they're the champions. Danny Burch and Oney Larkin came out, and you're like, okay, I know for a fact they're going to be in it. Indus Sher came out, okay, great, I know they're going to be in it. There's 4 teams there, and obviously there's teams that are going to be underneath that can still come up. But we did see Damian Priest defeat Killian Dane. Damian Priest is a character I really like. We did see Killian Dane kind of scare Robert Stone as he was leaving. Robert Stone fell over. Aaliyah came out and actually helped Robert Stone up. Robert Stone appears to have a new client in Aaliyah. Aaliyah defeated Xia Li, which, to be honest, I'd have thought Xia Li would have got the win there, but I was impressed. And we did see Robert Stone throw up all over the ring. Now, I'm disgusted by that. Disgusted in a completely different way to the ninja stuff. Disgusted in a completely different way to some of the more stupid stuff that WWE are capable of. Why is he puking in the ring? Okay, that was Dross's gimmick in the 90s, but it never got over for a reason. Anyway, let's look at one of the good things that they do have coming up. William Regal offered a solution to the issues between Adam Cole and Keith Lee. He announced that Lee would defend his championship against Finn Balor and Johnny Gargano next week in a triple threat match, with the winner challenging Cole on July the 8th. Now, why that's important is the first triple threat match is for the title, the North American title. The winner, the North American champion, goes in against Adam Cole. The winner takes it all. The great thing there is it seems like this could be a call-up for Adam Cole. WWE tend to like to do switches here. Keith Lee is a big dude. That's somebody Vince likes. And I can see Keith Lee getting the North American title win in the triple threat match, going in against Adam Cole and losing, and Adam Cole has both belts. Keith Lee gets called up, and we see a change in the atmosphere on, for me, SmackDown. I think Keith Lee is somebody who would do a great job on SmackDown. Dakota Kai defeated Kaden Carter. Bronson Reed defeating Leon Ruff. And Bronson Reed, I know we've mentioned the race thing a little bit. He posted the other week about how he's had to deal with race issues over the years. I just don't understand it. I mean, the thing that makes me laugh when it comes to race is I'm 36 now, and I think it was about 12 or 13 years ago, The Rock was doing an interview promoting a movie, and he said he was a proud black man. And I don't know why, but I'd never thought of him as a black man or a white man. It literally, for some reason, was the first time that had ever entered my head. I mean, I always thought because of his family heritage, he was Hawaiian or Samoan. But then I realized his dad's a black man. The other side of the family is Samoan. He isn't one. He is a mixture. And it just hit me that it shouldn't matter because it didn't enter my head. I think it doesn't enter everybody else's head, but apparently it does, especially if you look at Facebook right now. Oh my God. Some of the stuff on Facebook is just insane. It makes me want to just take time off of Facebook. Anyway, I did say I wasn't going to make this show political. I don't think this is political. This is just something that's pissed me off this week, so it's going to be part of the show. Bayley and Sasha Banks defeated Tegan Nox and Shotzi Blackheart. It was the main event. Again, females in the main event of the show. Very impressed. We do, however, get the Iconics versus Sasha and Bayley next week on Raw. Now, with SmackDown being taped literally at the last minute, very little spoilers for that show, which is quite interesting because normally something leaks out. So it will be interesting to see what happens. There is a planned Intercontinental title presentation that was easy for me to say that AJ Styles has invited the entire SmackDown roster to. However, it's very difficult to see that going without some kind of trouble. So that's the only thing we seem to know right now about what's happening on SmackDown. But joining us now is my producer, Zoe Styles, who is going to be talking about AEW. So joining me just now for the AEW section of the show is, of course, Zoe Styles. Say hello, Zoe.
Hello.
You didn't say hello, Zoe, which is great. Because for some reason it really wound me up last week. I don't know why. Okay, so this week. Yeah. Yeah, that's what marriage is like. If you're not married, that's basically what it is. You spend your entire day looking to annoy the other person, don't I?
Yeah.
This week the AEW NXT battle. Now I'm going to talk about NXT next. AEW Dynamite garnered 677,000 viewers, respectable amount considering it's a pandemic situation and all the ratings are out of pot. What is quite funny, if you look at the last 5 weeks, 677,000 this week, 730,000 the week before, 827,000 the week before that, which I believe was the week following the pay-per-view, 701,000 and 654. What is quite interesting, though, however, is that this week NXT was on 673,000. There's a lot of great content on the NXT show, helped no doubt, I think, by the arrival of the women's tag team champions as well. So NXT, big competition this week for AEW. There's been quite a lot of weeks where it hasn't even seemed like a close competition. But that's just the TV numbers. I don't want to go down into the deep dive of looking at the YouTube numbers and looking at the views that all the shows are getting for the segments that are being put up on the YouTube channels. So let's not go down that route. Let's quickly look at what's happening on the Dynamite show. So what happened this week? You were the one who watched Dynamite this week.
I actually quite enjoyed it this week. We saw Hangman and Omega. They retained their titles this week. Colt Cabana got offered.
Dustin Rhodes and QT Marshall. Now, I know we discussed this earlier, but obviously not on the show. I'm a little frustrated by Dustin Rhodes and QT Marshall getting a title shot. Now, do you know why I'm frustrated?
No.
Okay, so at the pay-per-view, they had the number one contender match for the tag title, right? Which is great. It's an incentive for two people to be fighting, or two teams, or two threes, or whatever it is. It's an incentive for these people to be fighting. But the people who won the number one contender match are getting the title shot after the number two contender. Now, I was always told that with wrestling, the number one contender is the next one to get the title shot. That's why they're called the number one contender. That's something that's really bugged me about the way they've booked that. Although I have no issue with Dustin Rhodes and QT Marshall getting a title shot. I think they've been very good as a tag team in recent weeks.
I really enjoyed the match. I thought that Dustin got over. It's clear that he can still go. And QT didn't seem out of step.
I think that's what's important, because obviously Omega and Paige have been around for a little bit. Everybody knows the name. Obviously, people know the Dustin name. But QT Marshall is kind of the anomaly there. He's the guy who people don't quite know well enough yet. But certainly somebody who, by the look of it, is going to be in and around the tag team title picture for a while with Dustin.
I think they do work well as a team. Obviously, QT's a bit younger, so he's a bit faster. And they did do some decent spots with him. He did get a chance to showcase what he can do.
Well, that's kind of all you can hope for. Now, if we move on with the recent injury for Chris Statlander, who, for me, whilst I've been big on the show in recent weeks about Nyla Rose, push Nyla Rose, because you put all this fanfare behind her. That's the person that you want to be pushing, even if she doesn't have the belt. Push her. Make it so that people want to see her in a title match. It makes no sense that they just keep signing new people and they just keep throwing stuff up in the air. But we had Abaddon versus Anna Jay. Now, these are two people I haven't seen much of. What was their match like?
To be honest, again, I instantly thought when they came out, right, who are these guys? Anna Jay at least got a hype video, so you got a bit of background about her and you knew why she was there. They both have been on, I think it's AEW Dark before.
Yeah, and AEW Dark's been a great way for them to almost give tryouts to people. And if you tune into AEW Dark on YouTube, it's almost like you're getting to see something. I'll tell this story very quickly. So when I went to get my two first tattoos, which were the dates of birth on my wrist, the tattoo artist happened to be a fan of the same football team as me, and he happened to have a subscription to the TV station that they run on the internet. So he was actually sat there doing my tattoos, and we're sitting talking about, the youth matches that he's watching, and he's mentioning the players that he's getting to see. And for me, that's kind of an exciting thing. I loved as a kid getting to go to the football and watch Aberdeen reserves here in Aberdeen, even though I wasn't an Aberdeen fan. It was cool knowing that at least one or two of those players were going to make it to the first team. They were going to probably end up making it to the Scottish team, or they were going to go somewhere else. And it's always interesting, especially when you look at Ryan. If you're not a football fan, I know this chat's going to kind of go off the way, but Ryan Fraser's an Aberdeen loon. Ryan Fraser's playing down at Bournemouth, and he's wanted by several clubs. That's a big deal. You look at some of the players like Russell Anderson who left and went abroad. I think that's one of the cool things about AEW Dark. It's almost like the fans who are going out their way to watch it on YouTube, they get a chance to kind of get behind these people before they get famous. Kind of like...
To be honest, I didn't really get a chance to get anywhere near the match. It lasted 2 minutes. I mean, I understand that's to push Abaddon and kind of, establish that she's a little bit scary. But I really thought that they would have given Anna Jay the win there. Because she is the more... I don't want to say likable, but personable character.
Okay, so when it came to it, after the match, I did read one of them was almost helped to the back, and there was an incident involving Colt Cabana. What happened there?
Colt Cabana got offered a match against Brody Lee. And Anna Jay was assisted to the back by the Dark Order. Who I hope she doesn't join, because I don't think her character matches with what they are. It was like when Daniel Bryan started going with the Wyatt family, and you start going, I don't see it.
To be honest, not a fan of the Dark Order. The wrestling group chat that I have, one of the members in there is a big fan of Brody Lee, and is a fan of one or two members of the Dark Order, but overall agrees that it's not working. What I find quite interesting as we move into the next match is MJF versus Billy Gunn. Now, I want to read something that somebody's put up online. Now, Billy Gunn has had one of the best physiques of any given roster he's been on for the past 20 years. Billy Gunn genuinely looks better now at his age than he did when he was in the Smoking Guns when you were born. That's how crazy Billy Gunn is. Billy Gunn is one of those people that I think WWE made a massive mistake getting rid of him. I know there was some controversy for the reason why he left NXT, but Billy Gunn, somebody who can coach, somebody who, if there's an injury on your roster, you can call him up to go on the road, and he's somebody that you can trust. Particularly somebody who's been through the good and the bad and wrestled drunk and knows all the pitfalls. But putting him in against MJF, having not watched it, was this as good a match as I would think it would be?
I really enjoyed it. In recent weeks, I've gotten behind the MJF character. There was a spot MJF got in the ring. He did a flare and then basically spun around to Billy Gunn and just mocked the hell out of him. And quite rightly got his butt kicked. One impressive thing that I really did like was that Billy Gunn managed to chuck Wardlow into the barrier on the outside.
I mean, Billy Gunn's a strong dude.
Yeah,
it's impressive to see that happen, but it's one of those things you're kind of thinking it's cool.
No disrespect to Billy Gunn, but with the age that he is, I didn't see that coming, because Wardlow is like big.
Yeah.
But overall, I really did. I liked the match. There were a lot of good spots. And I was very happy with the finish, because MJF actually got the win, despite the fact that there was never any doubt he was going to win. It's just, there were some good enough spots that you thought Billy Gunn might get it. His sons were there.
Which is cool. I think Austin Gunn's a very, very promising person. And I think if he's got somebody like Billy in his ear, then that could be very good. Now, one of the things I did read, I'm going to read the line verbatim, and you can tell me what this is about. Big Swole called back to The Undertaker abducting Stephanie. So what happened there? Did Big Swole do something that was slightly alarming?
Well, that's fairly accurate. Big Swole abducted Britt Baker.
Okay.
Threw her in a dumpster outside of the arena.
Okay, so now here's the thing that for me is quite funny. Now, people are seeing these parallels where it's almost like WWE stories kind of being repeated a little bit here and there. But people are going to be looking for that. And that's one of the problems. People are going to be looking for that kind of stuff.
I think Britt Baker did very well there. There was an earlier segment where she was with Tony Schiavone. Tony did an interview, but he said something that offended her. And Britt Baker was like, nah, like pause time on our friendship. We're not talking just now. And then she got chucked in the dumpster, and the first thing she said was, "Where's Tony Schiavone?"
See, that's what friends do. That is absolutely what friends do. I know for a fact I can fall out with Garland, and in 2 weeks' time there'll be something that makes one of us message the other one something absolutely stupid, and we forget that we fell out. I mean, to be honest, the last time it was a couple of years rather than a couple of weeks, but we won't go down that route. So Cody defeated Ricky Starks in the Open Challenge for the TNT Championship. Still not a fan of that belt, even if I'm not a fan of that TNT Championship.
I thought that Stark got a decent build up for that match, even though he's a relative unknown. They gave him a hype video. They let it be known that he's a former champion, just so that you knew why he was in with someone like Cody Rhodes. The match could have gone a bit longer. I think there was a bit too much like throwing over and not enough proper chain wrestling. But on the whole, I liked watching it.
So we move on to the next match, which was the tag team match. Was that any good?
Tag team match for me was a write-off. Obviously, the outcome was as expected, as is always the case, it would seem, with them. There was quite a lot of brotherly love there. You know, one would get themselves into a little bit of bother, the other would come in for the save. But it just seemed like the same 6 sets put together in different ways to build the match together. And I lost interest.
I mean, that seems for me to be one of the issues I have with AEW, where you kind of always have that, where there are certain people who have the same match all the time. So move on to another tag match, Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara versus Best Friends. You did say to me earlier you're not really a fan of the Best Friends.
I'm not. I think they have a lot of potential, but the way that they're putting their gimmick across doesn't get across their character. I think there's this overarching theme that's kind of holding them back, and you don't get behind the actual guys that are doing the gimmick, really.
Which is a
For
crying
me,
shame, I think. They
yeah.
are 2 talented wrestlers, hampered perhaps by, for me, what's a relatively throwaway gimmick. Some will disagree. I think it's a relatively throwaway gimmick. Now, overall, what did you think of the show?
Overall, I enjoyed it this week. Again, there was a lot of good wrestling. Although we had some new people there, they actually had some story behind the matches, which was good. You knew why Cody was getting an open challenge. You knew why Britt Baker was in the dumpster, because she got a broken leg, she couldn't get herself out. I felt Guevara
They're keeping her on TV, by the way, and that's one of the things. Sometimes when she gets injured, they go off TV for 6 months, and you forget about them.
The one thing that I did note, and I don't know whether this is like a concern, but the audience seemed to have completely got rid of the 2-meter thing.
Okay, so I mean, in America, I know some areas are down to 1 meter. I know WWE have been pretty lax in the past couple of weeks from what we've seen in the audience on Raw. So I'm kind
I would have been surprised if there was a meter between them, because they were block to block along the end of the aisle.
I mean, that would be a shame, particularly if somebody was to fall ill. But I know they are testing a lot more in AEW than they have been in WWE. So thank you for joining us on Headlocks and Headphones. And hopefully next week we have some homework for you, do we?
Yeah, I can't remember what it was though. It was a whole week ago.
This is the thing, right? I take too many bumps to the head occasionally. Now, I can't remember what your homework was. So I kind of decided that you have 2 options for what your homework's going to be. Right? Now, your first option is any John Cena movie you want. And your second,
okay, cool.
And your second option is Hulk Hogan, Mr. Nanny. Now, I know I'm leaning towards Mr. Nanny because you've never seen that before, and I think it'd be great to find out what you think of Hulk Hogan as an actor wearing a tutu. If you don't know what I mean by that, trust me, it's great.
I'm leaning more toward John Cena because there is actually a John Cena film that I really like.
But you've also seen it, and that is not what you're allowed to watch. It has to be something you haven't watched. No.
It's been a long time since I've seen it.
Nope. The rules are homework is not you regurgitating something you've done before. I know that's what the Scottish education system wants, but
that's what the entire education system wants. They give you in tiny bits when you're a kid and you build on it.
Okay, well, you are not allowed to watch a film you've already seen. Okay. So you can watch any John Cena film you haven't seen, or Hulk Hogan, Mr. Nanny. I'll even give you option number C, which I know C is not a number, so number C, you can watch Hulk Hogan, Suburban Commando, which features Christopher Lloyd from Back to the Future.
I've seen Suburban Commando. I can't watch that.
Okay. So is there any other films with wrestling? And you can't watch any of the Miz ones because they're all crap. In fact, most wrestling films are crap. But
is the sequel to the one I originally wanted to watch, is that Randy Orton? I can't remember which. I can watch that.
Well, but have you seen Ready to Rumble with David Arquette?
Yes, I have.
Okay. You've seen
that was like the first wrestling movie you ever made me watch.
Okay, so what if we... I just want you to watch Mr. Nanny, to be fair. Can you watch Mr. Nanny for next week's show?
Yeah, I'll watch Mr. Nanny. I mean, I'm not a massive Hogan fan, that's the thing. I would rather watch something with Cena than something with Hogan.
Well, I think you should watch Mr. Nanny and let everybody know what you think. You up for it?
Even
if it's reluctantly. You're up for it. Great. Now,
if you give me popcorn and some juice, I'll be happy.
What that does mean, though, is right, as soon as we stop this show, you're going to have to go and watch the trailer for Mr. Nanny so you know exactly what you've been signed up for, at which point I'm probably going to get slapped. Because it is quite
It's fine. I've got a build-up of reasons why I'm going to slap you today anyway, so, you know.
And I'm going to be honest. I'm almost positive there's reasons you don't even know yet. They are coming. And at some point when you find out, I will get hit for them, which is great. I like it.
See, I can't make that joke the other way around. I was going to say there's reasons why you might be mad at me, but I can't make that joke the other way around because I'm a woman.
I can hit you. Listen, in today's day and age, we want equality. So bitch is going to get slapped. I'm only kidding. I don't hit you. Please publicly declare that I don't hit you often.
You don't hit me often, and if you do, it's with permission and never too hard. Apart from that time you punched me in Nando's.
Right. Do you want to tell the Nando's story before you go?
Right, okay. To summarize, the Nando's story was my husband. I was fairly new to wrestling at the time. This was right at the start of our relationship. And my husband was teaching me about pulling punches and pulling attacks to explain how wrestlers could go night after night without getting completely injured. And he attempted to pull one of his punches and didn't succeed.
And punched you square in the face in the middle of Nando's.
And then, of course, there was the next time we were in Nando's. And you went to prove to me that you could pull your punches. And I got smacked in the face again. It
wasn't quite as hard the second time, though.
I think the first time wasn't that bad either. It was more the shock of the incident. Because at that point, I was only ever punched in the face by one other person, and that was my brother.
Now I'm a wife beater. That sucks. But I'm not really, because it was all just in jest. Great.
Disclaimer for everybody watching. I love my husband. He is not abusive in any kind of way, and he buys me lots of presents.
I mean, you can't quite see it because you're not meant to see it because it's a Christmas present. Okay, so the last few weeks, let's just remind ourselves of what happened. Okay, week 1, Murphy was supposed to show up for an interview, didn't. Murphy then decided, in his wisdom, to send me a parcel. This one. Now, I've been told that I can't even show it. I can just show you the other side of it. Apparently, I don't have permission to show it. If you want to know why, ask Zoe. She said we're not allowed to show the logo. So last week, when there was no response from Murphy, now Murphy was meant to be on the show. Murphy decided not to appear, and this is not the first time he's done this. There's been several weeks where we've had things in place for him to appear. We've had an interview planned where we're just going to find out why he's a wrestling fan. Even though the lockdown's kind of being eased, we're in phase 2 here in Scotland. There is, of course, further easements all over the world in various parts. We did plan on doing an interview with him 6-7 weeks ago, and the idea was to just wrestling fans talking about wrestling, finding out what the other person liked. He's bailed countless times, so obviously I was less than happy about him bailing, but that paled in significance to the anger that was felt by JJ Andrews, who was told that the parcel that was being sent to me was something they were going to do together, and it was ignored. He was also told, I've been told, that there was a match that was going to be booked for a wrestling show that Murphy had planned for November of last year that was then rearranged for February. The problem is that JJ did not get what he asked for. From what I've been told, from the little conversation I've had with JJ, I was told that he was told to get himself in shape, which he's done a great job of during the lockdown. And he said that he isn't asking for the match right now. He wants to have some kind of assurances that his hard work is going to pay off. But he's not been getting any responses. It led to last week's video, which saw JJ kind of break lockdown regulations by traveling to where Murphy stays. Now, obviously, if somebody comes and films my house, I'm going to be pissed. So when I aired what I aired last week, I had no idea what response I was going to get from Murphy. Now, I've watched it, and there's a lot less swearing than I thought, we'll put it that way. But I'm sure JJ is going to have something to say to this.
First off, I would like to take this time to apologise to Headlocks and Headphones. They warned me not to reveal that logo on their broadcast. I disobeyed them. That is entirely my fault. But secondly, I want to address the issue with JJ Andrews. One, you shouldn't be coming to my house. That's a no-go. But that is an issue I will save and discuss at a later time. On a radio broadcast is not the kind of place to be doing that stuff. And JJ, I've got no idea why you're requesting a match when I never promised you a single damn thing. But we'll see what happens.